Welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Interventional Endoscopist. I'm your host, Munkupple Suchdave. So today we're going to be talking to a friend of mine, Matt Schwartz, who works at Virgo, and he's the co-founder and the creator of it. But basically, every so often, someone who's outside of medicine looks at a way that we work and says, "There's got to be a better way to do things." And so today we're going to be talking to Matt, who did that with his colleagues. He's a co-founder and the CEO of Virgo Video Solutions, or Virgo as they're called, a company that took one of the most overlooked assets in endoscopy, which is a procedural video, and it turned it into something structured and usable data. If you ever finished a challenging procedure, such as an ERCP or a complex polypectomy, and you wish you could instantly review it, maybe even tag it or analyze the case, you'll understand why a lot of this matters. Virgo's building the video and the AI background that may define the next decade of endoscopy. So, Matt, welcome and thank you for joining me. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Sacha. This is super fun. It's great to be here.
So I actually mentioned Virgo on my very first episode. This is kind of a full circle moment. The very first episode of the Interventional Endoscopist talked about video recording, and Virgo was highlighted quite a bit in there. And we talked about automation and digital endoscopy suites and things along those lines. But let's start with you first of all. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you got involved to Virgo, and how you got to where you are today, and a little bit about the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's full circle is the right way to describe it. You've been a friend, not just to me, but to Virgo. You were the first site to actually install our first working product, and we owe you a huge debt of gratitude for letting us into your endoscopy suite to figure that out. So it's great to get to chat about this stuff. My quick background: so I grew up in suburbs outside of Indianapolis. Did my undergrad at Vanderbilt and studied biomedical engineering. My dad is an orthopedic spine surgeon, and so medicine was kind of always in the household and always something I was definitely interested in. Actually, did an internship the summer after my freshman year with a minimally invasive spine surgery device company out in San Diego. After that, I fell in love with medical devices and medical technology. I actually switched my major from economics to biomedical engineering coming out of that internship. And then after undergrad, I actually came out to San Diego to work for that company. It's called Nuvasive,
Hmm.
as a product manager. And again, just had a blast of a time developing new medical technologies and getting to work in the operating room with some amazing surgeons around the country and around the world. After my time at Nuvasive, I worked at Intuitive Surgical, which is a company that makes the Da Vinci robotic surgery system. Again, as a product manager working on their next generation platforms. And it was really around that time that I fell in love with machine learning and computer vision. This was probably 2015 or 2016. I saw a talk at the time. This is kind of shortly after AlexNet was making waves in the computer vision space. And I saw this talk about how increases in data and compute power with GPUs and some new developments in machine learning algorithms were powering an upcoming wave of deep learning. And I just fell in love. I became somewhat obsessed with machine learning, computer vision, started taking courses online, and kind of in my spare time was trying to train machine learning models. And in my travels, both with Nuvasive and Intuitive, as I would go out to support these procedures, I tried to record video of them and had this light bulb moment, realized that there's an incredible amount of video being generated in medical procedures that nobody was capturing. And back in 2016, had this idea that if we could somehow build up the biggest repository of medical procedure videos, it would become increasingly valuable for AI purposes down the road. Truthfully, we didn't exactly know what that would look like. We just felt like this was really important data that nobody was capturing, and we felt like we could do something about it. So, yeah, I ended up leaving my job at Intuitive in late 2016 to start Virgo.
Interesting. So was AI always kind of at the forefront of what you thought about? Because, as you mentioned, you wanted to get this data and you recognized very early that hospitals and healthcare systems and ASCs for that matter are sitting on this, mountain of unused data. So was it always kind of the end game? Because I think initially when you and I talked about it, the initial kind of focus of Virgo was let's get this video and let's just see what we can do with it. Do you want to publish it? Do you want to, use it for training, for quality control, or even at some point even sell it? I know that was a model that you guys looked at for a little bit. But was kind of AI always kind of the background target there, or was that something that developed as you and your team kind of grew?
Yeah, so AI was definitely always the end goal. I think it's still in my desk at home. I've got this like single sheet of paper out of a notebook that I scratched the idea for Virgo down on. This is, I think, probably July of 2016. And the whole idea was to build up a data repository, use that for AI purposes. But if you look across like really consumer technology or other fields that have adopted AI successfully, what you find is that you need some sort of a data engine. Like it doesn't usually work to just try to capture data solely for the pursuit of AI. You need some impetus to really be capturing data at scale. That's where you get the unlock for the AI downstream. And so even early on, we felt very strongly that we couldn't just go out and ask people to record for AI purposes. We'd get too small of a data set,
Right.
and so we thought a lot about how can we build a product out of data capture with the long-term goal of building up the data set. And folks like yourself who have taken an interest in video in gastroenterology well before we even existed, there was kind of this unmet need for video capture in gastroenterology. It wasn't always totally clear what you needed video for. A lot of times we analogize it to a home security camera system where you just it's nice to have the video. You never know what you might use it for, and you start to uncover these new use cases if you have the data. But so yeah, the product on day one was just video capture and management. Try to make that easy and automated for physicians. But in our mind, the real goal was always to get that going to power this future AI wave.
Yeah, no, it's actually pretty fascinating because when you look at kind of that evolution, I think video really started getting popular in GI right around 2006, and I'll credit Dr. Peter Kelsey and Brenna Bounds over. I think they're at Beth Israel, and they started the Dave Project. And I don't. It was a digital atlas for video endoscopy. I think is what it stood for. And them, and then Dr. G.S. Raju, who was a guest on the podcast early, also kind of got involved with that. And then it turned into Video GIE. And it was initially just a place for us to put procedural videos and techniques. And then there was a course for interventional fellows to go learn how to do their procedure or record their procedures and edit them. And then that kind of laid the groundwork for Video GIE. And that's kind of where, when I approached you guys about using it, that was kind of my focus. But it's kind of cool to see how went from creating a journal or just a repository of how to do procedures into something that's going to tell us how to do them better, so that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, it's it's a crazy story to look back on. So actually, when we started Virgo, I was coming out of intuitive surgical and initially was thinking about recording surgical videos. And I was talking to all sorts of robotic surgeons in urology, gynecology, colorectal surgery. I reached out to a bunch of the spine surgeons I'd worked with in the past, and they were interested in video, but um, it was really when I actually talked to a childhood friend I went to elementary school with. His dad's a gastroenterologist in the suburb of Indiana where I grew up,
Mm,
a suburb of Indianapolis. And I talked to him. I was like, "Here's what we're thinking. I don't know anything about gastroenterology. What do you think?" And he said, "Well, you know what? There's actually like this world expert in colorectal cancer screening here at IU Health.
yeah,
His
yeah,
name's Doug Rex. You should
yeah.
talk to him." And I was like, "Okay, great." And so got in touch with Dr. Rex, and then started unraveling all this literature, things he had written about video capture and the importance of video capture, how it can be helpful for medical legal reasons, how it can be
Mhm.
helpful for improving quality just by capturing video. And it became clear to me that the GI community had been thinking about video, I think, at a deeper level and for longer than any of the surgical specialties. We then realized it's also way higher procedural volume than any of the surgical specialties, and it became this really natural fit. But it's serendipitous. Now, Dr. Rex has actually scoped both of my parents. His endo center is right down the street from where I grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy small world and a crazy journey.
So, you mentioned how we in my center we were using it initially, but that was kind of a little special case in the sense that I we owned the practice and we were very nimble and able to incorporate these things as we wanted to. But the early adopter phase for any new technology is kind of fascinating. How do you get people involved? Were there any centers or physicians specifically, I mean, outside ours, that took a risk on and how did that work out, and how were you able to convince them to take a chance on this concept?
Yeah, in the early days as a startup, especially in healthcare where things can move slowly, it's really important to find those early adopters when you're trying to find some semblance of product market fit. Um, we went to the AGA Tech Summit early on, starting the company, and was an amazing environment for meeting forward-thinking gastroenterologists like yourself. Folks like Mike Coachman were super helpful making connections early on, and then the team at Northwestern was also really early adopters. So Sri Komanduri, Raj Kiswani, Aziz Adam, they saw the light, and I know you train there, and so it makes
Yeah.
sense that there's a lot of overlap, and it was a lot of just kind of like understanding how physicians might be able to use video capture at scale, which um, it's maybe not the best way to run a startup. Like usually, you want to look for a really deep pain point that you can solve with some solution. For us, we just knew we wanted to capture this data, and so it was a little bit more trying to uncover some pain points, and a lot of that was early adopters that wanted video for research that they were doing or quality improvement programs that they were initiating, but this capability hadn't really existed before, and so we relied a lot on those early adopters to guide us and figure out if you had this capability to record video at scale and to do it cost effectively, what might you be able to do with that data?
Yeah. And, a little footnote on the Northwestern thing. I think, if I remember correctly, and I hope I'm not taking credit for some stuff I shouldn't be, but when I was a fourth year fellow there, I had just done that video editing course that I talked about earlier. And so they gave us a laptop and a foot pedal to do all this recording with. And I really, I mean, I didn't love their systems, and I had a MacBook, so I spent probably about 8 hours total over 2 weeks in Radio Shack that was down there on Michigan Avenue before they went out of business, and I kept coming back with all these wires and little gadgets and plugging them into things, and, Sri was kind of confused by, "What are you doing?" And then when I explained it to him, he let me do it, and we recorded a lot of cases, and we even published something that, got into the Video Endoscopy Forum at DDW. And, and then after I left a mess of wires and buttons. I'm sure they probably hated me in my absence, and
We had
they
to deal
probably
with it, yeah.
little switcher pedals and, switcher buttons and whatnot, and so they figured it out, and then they opened a new suite, and I think, they really streamlined it using your services as well as whatever else they have there, but yeah. So once your first installs were live, like the one at Northwestern, for example, what did you guys kinda notice? Like, were these providers and physicians immediately able to see the potential, or did it take time for that culture to kind of switch towards valuing video as data for them?
Honestly, yeah, I think it's still evolving. Like we still hear from physicians that are using Virgo in kind of interesting ways that we hadn't really conceived of or hadn't heard of before. Um, and like thinking back to the early Northwestern days, there were interesting research projects that they had going on. They're actually wanting to record video from animal labs and then compare how that training in animal labs was carrying over into actual procedures downstream, and learn how training was being retained by physicians over time, and comparing that with video. That's been super interesting. The group at UMass, they've got Virgo installed across the health system now, and we're constantly learning of these interesting ways where they're going back and reviewing videos and building video cohorts. Um, we've heard of cases where uh, GI needs to refer a patient to colorectal surgery. And in the past, they said, if we just sent the chart, the colorectal surgeon's usually going to want to do another endoscopy and kind of visualize the tumor before doing a resection. And they've gotten away from that by just being able to send the index colonoscopy so the physician can review it I think we've even heard of a case where initially when the referral was made, the surgeon said they didn't think they could operate and it was maybe going to, it looked like terminal colorectal cancer. And then they went back and reviewed the endoscopy and they said, actually on second look, we think we can operate on this. And like, we did not think of those sorts of use cases when we got started here. But it's one of those things where if you've got technology, interesting things start to spring forth.
Yeah, no, I mean, from a very practical standpoint, I think it's a great use case scenario because on the clinical side, we get referrals for EMRs or ESDs, and you get these black and white pictures sent over to you on a fax, which is, and the patient's always asking, "Did the doctor send you the pictures?" And the answer is yes. Well,
Yeah.
what do you think? And you just kind of have to tell them something because you don't want to tell them it's a black and white fax copy that doesn't show me anything. It's just a smudge.
Right.
So, with the ability to incorporate video or, and send it, that would be a, a great way to do things. It should be something that we should incorporate.
Yeah. It's turned into, like, when we started the company, the idea was build up this data set for AI. Pretty early on, we realized this is just a gap in clinical documentation. In, we're now in 2025, you can record an unlimited amount of 4K video from your phone wherever you are in the world and store it in the cloud for $1 a month with
Yeah.
Apple. And it's just crazy when you mention faxing black and white photos. Like it doesn't really make sense anymore. And so a North Star for us is we just think these procedures should all be recorded.
Mhm.
If patients are taking the time going through prep and going through the procedure, physicians are taking the time to do high quality procedures, why not save that data? And again, like a security camera system, you don't know when you might need it, but when you do want it, it sure is nice to have it.
So, and I think that kind of leads us into another point about when you have concerns. So when you started in the early months working with hospitals like Northwestern or UMass, kind of it's hard to get things into healthcare systems. You
Yeah.
have the IT departments, the security reviews, credentialing, procurement, and you just have to create credibility with these teams. So talk a little bit about those challenges that you face just with a systemic standpoint before you could get
Yeah.
into the door.
Yeah. I mean, that was the biggest challenge early on. Healthcare data is rightfully sensitive data, and healthcare systems are reluctant to take a chance on a new player. Um, when we first got started, is actually I think we were talking to some physicians at the Mayo Clinic, and they were interested in bringing Virgo in. And we didn't actually end up getting Virgo into the Mayo Clinic at the time, but the Mayo Clinic provided us with a massive IT security checklist, and we were still like building the product and having conversations. And we said, you know what, we need to look at this checklist as kind of the test. We need to be able to pass this test in all
Mhm.
cases. And so very early on, we brought in this amazing security consultant that I still credit with, like really helping to build a culture of security mindset here at Virgo. And we're a relatively small team, but I think we very much punch above our weight when it comes to security and best practices because of implementing those things very early on.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of did it the hard way, like we had to make sure we passed the test, and you do that one system at a time. And as you start to do it more and more, we've really learned just a lot of tribal knowledge about how to communicate with healthcare IT systems. We've now gone through this IT and security review process at a number of the biggest and leading health systems in the country. We're actually doing work with the VA system, and we've just, yeah, we've learned a lot along the way. It's I don't we didn't have any shortcuts to it. It was a lot
Right.
of just grind it out and figure it out until we built the best practices. I think like the one thing that I think helped us along the way was just being very communicative with healthcare IT professionals. And back in 2018, healthcare systems were not interested in cloud services. That's definitely changed along the way, but a lot of what we would do is just explain and kind of espouse the benefits of cloud technologies to health systems. And I think that sort of two-way dialogue was really helpful.
Okay, and so that's with the hospitals and the systems, but what about the physicians? So, a
Yeah.
couple of things with physicians. Number one, is they don't like to do things in general that adds more work. So, yeah. So, how do you convince them that this isn't something that's going to create friction for their workflow? And
Yeah.
secondly, even with my own practice, when we had 3 units initially, in one for each room, and I had physicians in my team that wouldn't use it at all because of the concern that this video is going to be recorded and it can be used to sue me a year down the road or 2 years down the road. So, how do you allay those concerns, both the kind of workflow disruption as well as the medical legal slash malpractice concerns that people have? And they're valid concerns, of course, with anything like this, and anything new. But what do you say to that?
Yeah. So those were definitely the two other major hurdles that we had to solve for early on. And on the workflow side of things, I had seen from my time in robotic surgery, I would try to do a lot of video capture, and sometimes I would send the video recording equipment out to the hospital, to the physician and their team, and I'd say, here's how to set it up. Could you please record the procedure? The compliance rate with that was like, I don't know, less than 5% of the time would they actually record the video. And it 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 immediately clicked for me. I mean, they've got a million and one things going on during a procedure. The last thing anyone needs to worry about is being an IT professional in the procedure room. And so we decided very early on at Virgo that we needed to automate the video capture workflow process. And we spent a lot of time developing the technology. We've got a patent on automating the video recording process using machine learning that actually runs on the device. So when you set up the device, the whole idea is you set it and forget it. The device is very small form factor. It's kind of meant to disappear. And then videos just automatically get captured, encrypted, and sent off to cloud storage. And we felt like if this is ever going to work, we've got to lower that burden to basically zero. And then there's the question on liability. And this was the other thing that even even within the practices and the health systems that adopt Virgo, it's still always a concern. There's always physicians that have this concern about, is video going to increase my medical malpractice liability? And I I heard this concern enough that we realized we need to figure out how to talk about this. And I must have spent probably close to 6 months just doing a deep dive on the medical malpractice insurance industry itself, and talking to executives at places like the Doctors Company and NorCal. I think it was MedPro was another one. And it's really interesting when you dig into the med mal insurance industry. It's this whole industry onto itself. One of the things you quickly learn is that the majority of premiums that get paid for medical malpractice insurance, you would think, that money's going to patients in big settlements. As it turns out, over 60% of your premiums get paid to lawyers. And the reason is that medical malpractice cases are notoriously difficult to litigate. It's a lot of he said, she said. There's not a lot of information to go off of, and these cases take 3, 4, 5 years to fully litigate. All the while, lawyers are making the most money. And when you talk to the insurance companies, they're pretty quick to point out that if they had more data, if they knew more of the facts about what happened in a case, they could save a lot of money overall. And the two ways you save: one, if you know that if you've got data to show there was not negligence during the case, even if there's harm, often you can get the case dismissed. And then if there is proof that there was both harm and negligence, what you're probably better off doing is actually just settling early and not spending a bunch of money on litigation. Um, and so we actually got some insurance companies to entertain the idea of even potentially giving discounts to groups that recorded video. And then I also go back to Dr. Rex. He's got this paper he wrote, I think it was back in 2012, talking about the best ways to avoid and defend interval cancer malpractice cases. And he very clearly lays out that the best thing you can do to protect yourself is have the best documentation possible for what you did.
Mhm.
And he says, video recording is coming. I think this is going to be the best way to protect yourself long term. And so I, we've now recorded close to, I think we're coming up on 3 million procedures recorded.
Wow.
And we're only aware of one time that a video's been requested for some sort of medical legal claim. There's a doctor here in Orange County. A patient made a complaint to the state medical board after a colonoscopy. That doctor, he actually records all of his procedures with Virgo, and he sends them to patients directly. And so
Wow.
he took that patient's video, sent it to the medical board. He also sent them like his last 50 procedures that he'd done. They took a look and said, it's obvious he follows the standard of care. There's no negligence here. We're going to dismiss the claim. And that was
Yeah.
that. So I, you know, I'm not a lawyer,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if people use their own judgment, it's worth considering. But that's how the conversation has evolved. And I think over time, the paradigm is shifting, and people are starting to view video recording as more of a protective tool than something that can increase their liability.
No, that's great. And I think also, I mean, the same kind of concern comes up nowadays with AI-based scribes.
Yeah,
What happens with the conversation, and technically most of these companies that record video, or excuse me, record audio for the scribe, they destroy it after it's been transcribed. So, obviously the video lasts, but it can be used to protect everything, and it's better to have everything encompassed in there. I think I love the concept of it being protective as opposed to punitive.
yeah,
Let's transition now to kind of the AI aspect of Virgo. So now that you've got this massive archive of structured at 3 million cases, and the obvious next step or the evolving step is AI, and you've mentioned that you're doing that. So you also mentioned that conversation started very early on in the development of the country, but what's kind of the roadmap for AI with Virgo at this point?
yeah. Yeah. So even since the very earliest days of Virgo, I got interested in a branch of machine learning called self-supervised or unsupervised machine learning. A lot of what people think of when they think of AI is supervised learning. And the classic example people talk about is an AI model that can classify cats versus dogs. And the way you do that, you label a bunch of images as cats versus dogs, and the AI model learns to distinguish them. Unsupervised or self-supervised learning is a little bit different, where you don't have a bunch of labels on your data. You try to get the AI model to learn from the data itself. And we always felt like, as we're building up this video data set, it's going to be impractical to label all of that data at scale. It'd be too time consuming, too expensive. And as it turns out, self-supervised learning is actually now becoming the state of the art in computer vision, and you actually get better performance when you don't label the data as a human. And so a lot of the AI has now caught up from a technology perspective in computer vision, in video in particular. And we're now very focused on building what we think of as an AI foundation model for endoscopic imaging. So instead of trying to tackle any one specific point solution like AI polyp detection, we want to build a foundation that can enable ourselves, medical device companies, pharmaceutical companies, and I think ultimately even physicians themselves to build new AI applications. And we think this is going to be the new paradigm that will actually help AI proliferate and take off in gastroenterology. So that's been our focus, is AI foundation modeling for endoscopic imaging.
So to be clear, you're not working on like a CAD E or CAD X model, or you're trying to help physicians create what they need to. Is that am I saying that right? Is that
Yeah, that's definitely that's definitely the focus. That there will likely be areas where we do look to build our own internal CAD-E or CAD-X solutions, but those will be based on this same foundation model that we're developing. And we introduced a foundation model earlier this year that we call EndoDino that was trained on a large subset of the videos we've captured. And what we've shown is that that foundation model can be used to build state-of-the-art models for recognizing GI anatomy, for detecting different pathology, for segmenting polyps and doing polyp detection. We also recently presented some data at UEGW in collaboration with the Cleveland Clinic and University of Leuven, where we showed we could take the baseline colonoscopy videos of patients with ulcerative colitis in the phase 3 Stellara clinical trial and actually predict in both the placebo arm and the treatment arm patients' likelihood of achieving 8-week endoscopic healing. And
Oh.
this is kind of just, black box AI. We don't know yet how the AI is determining which patient will be a responder versus a non-responder. But what we think it shows is that this foundation model concept can really power all sorts of new AI applications. And one of those applications might be, bounding boxes for polyps. But we think that's just one of the applications. And for something like CADI for polyps, we're really interested in this idea of enabling physicians and healthcare systems or practices to actually build their own CADI or CADX solution for polyps. We think is a really interesting opportunity.
And so I guess let's explore that a little bit. So what's the benefit, I guess, of so for example, you have a competitor GIG, oh not a competitor, but you have a GIGS which is doing CADI, right? Or CADX as well. And they're helping us detect polyps. But why so let's say Mayo Clinic creates their own CADI solution and Cleveland Clinic creates their own. Why would we want two separate CADE solutions as opposed to one uniform one?
Yeah.
What are the thoughts on that?
I think there's a couple of different like interesting opportunities here, I guess, is a way to frame it. So one is with our foundation model, it's pre-trained on this massive corpus of data that's extremely diverse data. It's extremely high volume, and that creates a very robust and generalizable backbone. And that lets, say a group like the Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic or even a large private practice bring in their data. And it's almost like fine tuning the foundation model for their specific patient population or their
Mhm.
specific needs. Um, and so they're able to do that with much lower labeling effort and kind of technical lift than they would have had to in the past by using our foundation model. But I think where things are going to get really interesting is if you have different practices that are, kind of building their own AI solutions, it allows for a lot more experimentation. So, if a group wants to experiment with something as kind of sounds as silly as changing the color of the bounding box, they can do that and they can see what sort of impact that might have. Or if they want to change the the confidence threshold and see how that changes the sensitivity and specificity of the bounding boxes, or if they want to focus on a certain type of polyp. There's just all these different design choices that I think we can learn a lot as a field and grow a lot faster if we're enabling these sorts of experiments to happen at scale. And then the other piece is that, a bounding box around a polyp, that's just one thing you could do. You could also build polyp classification or polyp sizing, or maybe look at how how does the polyp's appearance actually impact our guidance for when we should see the patient back down the road in a specific patient population. There's just
Mhm.
all sorts of experimentation. And then you look at other areas outside of colorectal polyps, Barrett's esophagus, or
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that. I think can be worked on from the same foundation model. And so we just think it's a much more powerful paradigm to explore AI in gastroenterology.
So just to kind of make it very simple for those who are not as technical that are listening. So you're basically creating a platform that allows a specific group of physicians to personalize the AI for the needs of their practice and their patient population, essentially.
Exactly, yeah. I like, I don't think we know yet whether AI performs differently. If you have one AI model trained on a patient population, how does it really extrapolate to another patient
Yeah.
population? You know, um, the FDA clearances for something like GI Genius, they try to get at that. They try to look at diversity of the sample size, but like what happens if you have a group that is training an AI model specifically for their actual patient population? Um, I just think we don't really know yet, and
Yeah.
we take a lot of inspiration from radiology, which in some ways I think the GI community is ahead on AI. There's more randomized control trial publications in GI than any other specialty. But from a pure adoption perspective, I think radiology is ahead in AI right now. And I've met radiologists at major health systems, and they're building their own AI. They use off the shelf foundation models for computer vision, and they customize it for their needs and use it in clinical practice to great effect. And um, I think it's a way that we break out of the simple, bounding box around a polyp paradigm in GI. I feel like everyone in the community sees a bigger future for AI in gastroenterology, and we think this foundation model concept is the way to get there.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense. Thanks for clarifying that. I mean, I think we are currently as a GI community, all we know is what we see, which is basically AI being used initially for polyp detection.
Yep.
Obviously, looking at it for what Iterative is attempting to do with identifying patients for clinical trials, and I think you've done a little bit of that with Virgo as well. I think that's one thing, and then obviously now we're getting into the world of AI documentation, scribing, ambient listening, etc.
Yeah.
But there's a whole, you know, we don't know what more we can do with it, and I think this is a great way to kind of explore that. Um, do you think that how can the AI or Virgo be used? Just kind of switching gears a little bit. How can we use it in an educational platform as well? Like, how would we be able to use the AI component of that to teach physicians to be better, or get credentialed or anything like that?
Yeah. It's a great question. I know a lot of the early interest in Virgo just as a video recording platform was around using video as a teaching tool, and we still find one of the most popular use cases for Virgo is in fellowship programs where fellows love to build up, video libraries of interesting cases, and attendings like to be able to use them in grand rounds. I think AI can definitely play a role there. Again, as Virgo, we haven't really explored building AI educational tools on our own. But part of our hope with this foundation model is that it can make it easier for physician educators to build AI focused tools. And one of the things we are looking to do with this foundation model that we've got is to make it available for research purposes for groups that have Virgo installed. And our hope is that we can build up some tools that would let physician educators, do like automatic highlighting or create automatic highlight reels from interesting cases and be able to immediately pick out the most important teaching moments from a given case, or see how certain procedures are adhering to guidelines on best practices for EGDs or colonoscopies. So yeah, I think it's a very fertile ground for
Yeah.
research and development. I think up to this point, it's been I guess just slightly too technically challenging for other groups to build on, and it hasn't been a focus for us. But we're hoping our technology can lower that hurdle.
No, I mean, I would love to see, and I can see this coming down as AI generated report cards for
Yeah.
fellows. You do 10 colonoscopies in a row, you run the AI report card, it tells you what you did well, what you did poorly.
Yeah.
And then even better is, we have these arbitrary numbers for EUS and ERCP and colonoscopies about who should be doing them in hospitals for credentialing. And this is all based off of data of years and years of research. But what if we were able just to, submit 15 to 50 whatever recordings, and the AI say, okay, this physician has a 95% confidence interval of doing a good job, versus this guy is horrible and we should never touch a scope in their lives. So it would be fascinating to have like the video data and AI really score people so that they could properly get the right privileges and credentials at hospital systems or ambulatory surgical centers. So I want to, we're getting close to time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about just your journey as a leader in a company, some lessons that you've learned, and just kind of for people out there who are listening, because we do have a lot of industry people listening to this podcast as well. So, you built a healthcare company. I would call that as a marathon. It's not something you just did overnight. You started it, you had to leave a job, you had to leave the security of probably a very good job with Intuitive,
Yep.
and now you took this leap of faith. So what are some of the biggest leadership lessons that you learned in regards to persistence, timing, and just navigating the space that you're in?
Yeah. Marathon is definitely the right description. Maybe like one of those Tough Mudder marathons where there's like, obstacles you've got to deal with and pain inflicted along the way. The entrepreneurial journey in healthcare is definitely tough. It's a heavily regulated industry that is often allergic to change, and so I think like one thing is just having a great support system around you, family, friends, significant others. My now wife, I mean, we were dating when I left Intuitive, and um, I don't know that either of us knew how kind of crazy and stressful the journey might be. I don't know if she would have been on board if she knew what that was going to look like, but she's been incredibly supportive, and through all sorts of ups and downs of running the company, having that support system is absolutely invaluable. I'd say like it probably worth figuring out your life situation before jumping into an entrepreneurial journey like that. It's like we've just been through a ton as a company. Survived through COVID and wasn't sure what
Yeah.
was going to happen with the company there. It's just kind of never ending ups and downs, and so you definitely have to have the perseverance and just believe in the mission of the company to see it through.
So with that, how do you keep yourself, and maybe more importantly, how do you keep your team motivated during these ups and downs? Well, these downs, I guess. The ups, it's not hard to keep motivated. Downs, like,
During the downs, it's I think it's about the mission and the mission of the company and what we're building toward. And we as a company, we're still a startup, we're still a relatively small company, and we've always, I think, attracted people to join the company that are drawn to that mission. We weren't hiring people based on what we were paying them. It was is people can go get great tech jobs at Google
yeah.
or Meta, um, but it's really this opportunity to build something and to do something unique. And like when we're recruiting people to the company, we talk a lot about the fact that no one was capturing this data, and we've got this amazingly unique data set. And I think to a person, everyone at the company now, they see the potential of what we're building and this opportunity to make a dent in healthcare for the better. And so when things are tough and we kind of have to buckle down, we do it as a team. And I think everyone, myself included, we want to see it through to this end state where we're able to really take the data we've captured and build AI tools that really change healthcare. And like the stuff we presented on, I mentioned with Cleveland Clinic on predicting IBD outcomes. Like that's the sort of thing
Yeah.
that it's almost like superhuman capabilities. You don't know how to do that. I've never met a physician that could do that just looking at a colonoscopy. And we think that's really just scratching the surface. And what else could we detect or predict from colonoscopies and upper endoscopies?
Absolutely. And I forgot to ask you at the beginning, and just how big is Virgo? Like, how many employees do you have, and where are you located, and where are your centers, etc.?
Yeah. So we're 15 people, and we're fully remote. I'm based here in San Diego. I've got one other employee here in San Diego, but everyone else is spread around the country, and actually two international employees. And yeah, that's been an interesting journey. When we started the company, um, me and one of my co-founders, we were in San Francisco. Third co-founder was in Chicago. We
I
kind of
remember
yeah, started the company semi-hybrid, but we're like mostly building up the product and engineering group in San Francisco. Then COVID happened, and like we had to figure out what to do. We ended up getting rid of our office in San Francisco. Everyone kind of went remote, and we've been building as a remote company ever since.
Were you scared, during COVID that you guys might not make it through the pandemic as a company?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we were kind of gearing up for fundraising at the time, and the markets obviously
Yeah.
seized. We even, we look at the um, one of the metrics we track is how many procedures are we recording on a daily basis. And the day that the announcement went out from the joint societies, like basically saying colonoscopies or elective endoscopies shouldn't be done anymore, we see the number just drop off a cliff and how many procedures we're doing. We basically stopped doing sales and outreach just out of respect to
Mhm.
everything that the healthcare community was dealing with. Obviously, we were not important in the mission to keep people safe at the time, and so yeah, we really weren't sure what was going to happen to the company. Um, we were able to get through and kind of just buckle down as a company. I will also say we've had amazingly supportive investors throughout the journey of the company, friends and family, angel investors, seed
Yeah.
investors, Series A investors, and definitely rely on those groups. This is my first time as an entrepreneur, my only entrepreneurial journey, and so
Yeah.
relying on those folks for support, especially in tough times, has been really helpful.
Yeah, that's that I can only imagine, that's you've got so many you've taken such a big risk, and then 2 years or 3 years after you make that decision, the country just shuts down and,
Yeah.
um, just outside of colonoscopy though, are you guys in any other I actually don't know this. Are you in urology or OB/GYN? Are you in any other, field right now outside of gastroenterology?
Yeah, so the other area where we've made some headway is in bronchoscopy,
Okay,
and we haven't really done any proactive work there. It's all been at hospitals where we're installed in the GI suites. Sometimes the pulmonologists are scoping in the same room or an adjacent room,
right.
and they get to talking and they say, "Hey, you know what? We'd love to record our videos too," and we've been happy to support that. We have done a little bit of capture in robotic surgery, which was a nice full circle moment just
Yeah,
recently, installing on some Da Vinci systems, um, and then are having some conversations around urology and gynecology. We still have a lot of runway in GI. We're capturing about 1 million procedures per year right now out of uh, I see estimates around 25 million GI endoscopies done in the US every year. So we've got a lot of runway there, but at some point would love to get into more of the other clinical areas.
yeah. So let's look a little bit ahead. So 5 to 10 years from now, what's an intelligent endoscopy suite look like to you?
Oh man. Um, well, part of the inspiration when starting Virgo was around automating robotics, and I was very interested in self-driving cars back as I was getting into computer vision. I think there's definitely potential to incorporate more robotics in endoscopy,
Yeah.
and I know that there's very interesting work going on at I don't know if it's at Intuitive, but certainly using Da Vinci systems and doing automated robotic surgery. And so I foresee some sort of robotic automation coming to the world of GI endoscopy. Um,
Yeah,
but the other
especially with multi-bending scopes and everything coming out for sure.
for sure. And yeah, there's challenges with doing automation when you've got flexible. There's kind of a flexible, pliable environment that you're working in. But I just think with better and better computer vision and AI systems, those will be solvable problems technologically. The thing that we're really excited about right now is kind of the early signs of what we're seeing with our AI foundation model being able to see things that are not readily apparent to the human eye. And um, endoscopy, we think, is pretty unique in healthcare, where you have this opportunity to minimally invasively see inside the patient. You see a lot of their anatomy. That anatomy is heavily vascularized, it's heavily innervated, the mucosa is changing. And we think there's a lot of signal there about a patient's overall health that might not be apparent to the human eye, or certainly not the main focus of a gastroenterologist. And so we are, starting to look at ways that our AI foundation model can help to uncover predictive signals for things like chronic kidney disease or liver disease or cardiovascular,
Yeah.
maybe neurodegenerative disease. And then I think there will also be ways to do more opportunistic screening during EGD and colonoscopy. Like, one of the things we've thought about, I suspect if it's not our current foundation model, future foundation model we build might be capable of detecting early stage pancreatic cancer, for example,
Right.
during just routine EGD. And the I think the bottom line is that we don't want to be over prescribing tests or create a bunch of false positives. But if a patient's already getting an EGD or a colonoscopy, you might as well try to get as much information from
Yeah.
that procedure as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, you wonder out loud, or I wonder out loud if, in the future, can we have a scope that maybe runs a separate feed with a different lens that is doing like endomicroscopy, looking at microscopic lining of the colon wall or intestinal wall, and
Yep.
maybe running a separate algorithm that's analyzing for future predictability of, like you said, cancer or something along those lines. So as we wrap up, I want to do a quick lightning round with you. I've got a couple of
Cool.
questions, just real like 1, 2, 3 word answers. What's the proudest moment for Virgo's journey so far?
Oh, definitely had some proud moments of like people we've hired that have actually gone on to get other amazing jobs in technology has been pretty cool to see. But aside from just kind of like the people we brought on and seeing the amazing work that they're doing, when we announced our AI foundation model earlier this year, that really felt like the culmination of this bet we made on data capture and AI 8 years ago, finally paying off. And super duper proud moment for the team. And then to be able to present on what that model is capable of, it's been a really inspiring year to be able to get to that point in 2025.
And one thing that you do differently if you had to start it all over again?
Oh man. Well,
Maybe it's not start before pandemic.
I will say I think there's never been a better time to start a company. Just like I've gotten very into AI based development tools, like software engineering tools, and I think yeah, just like leveraging AI as much as possible, especially when starting a company. I think you can get very far with less capital than you would have needed in the past, and so yeah, I'd recommend entrepreneurs. There's no excuse anymore for not just building the working prototype or MVP of what you got in mind, and you can build a lot more, a lot faster than ever before.
Wow. So Matt, thank you so much. So this was Matt Schwartz. He's the co-founder and CEO of Virgo. So if you ever wish your endoscopy video could teach you something, it could, make you better. It can give you a platform to create an AI that will work for you and your center. Look into Virgo. If you're going to any meetings like the ASGE Tech Summit, the Fiesta meeting that happened last week, Fight, ACG, keep an eye out for Matt. He's always at these meetings and you can come talk to him and figure out something out. But as always, thank you everybody for listening to the Interventional Endoscopist Podcast. If you are a fellow or a young or beginning career physician, make sure you join those societies like ASGE and Fight. Go to those meetings. Really get involved so you can affect change in GI. And if you also, as I always say, if you're struggling with any mental health issues, seek help. Talk about it because it's nothing to be ashamed about. Everyone goes through stuff. So, Matt, thank you once again. And I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity. Always great to chat with you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Please hit that like button and that subscribe button.